Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, June 24th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief. Morning, Tom.
Good morning, Carl. Yesterday, Joe Biden announced that he has a strategy to battle the crime wave that seems to be taking over most of the cities in America, including my city of Chicago. But Carl, he basically came down to gun control, said that there are too many guns on the street. And he said, even though these cities, people tell you these cities have the strictest gun control laws in the country, he said, don't believe it. We do have very strict gun control laws. I know here in Chicago in particular. Is this plan going to be enough to do what the Biden administration wants to do, which is obviously curtail some of the violence that's going on?
Tom, I had a sense of deja vu. I was seeing this. I remember the last major federal legislation push it was called simply the crime bill. Joe Biden was Judiciary Committee chairman of the Senate then. And the idea then was to get more police on the streets. Bill Clinton was president. He used the phrase community policing. He used that phrase interchangeably with another doctrine, proactive policing. They're actually opposite theories. This bill had money for both of them. And a lot of money to build more prisons. Now, that was, 30 years ago. Now, the Democrats are back to focusing on gun control. And you know what, Tom? This is more popular than it was then. The polling has changed a bit. Americans are more, I think, receptive to that idea. The National Rifle Association does not have as much sway in Washington as it did then. And you look at these things, last week, and you were talking about Chicago, I think 50 people shot, 10 of them fatally. There was this horrific scene. I mean, you can watch murder on your handheld now. Two people pulled out of a car and shot, some were executed essentially. And, you can't help but think, why do these people why are there so many guns? I mean, that's sort of a human reaction now. And, Chicago has gun control, but you can go to Indiana or Wisconsin or downstate and buy a gun easily, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the administration will say, is that it's guns that flood into the city from outside sources.
Well, that's
why they suggest that there's, but their suggestion, their answer to that is that we need federal action on guns because you can't trust the individual states to handle it, because obviously Indiana is a very red state with more lax gun laws. But Carl, is this another sort of dead end for the Biden administration? I mean, gun control has been a very thorny issue for every administration. And given the makeup of the Senate, I mean, is that something that Biden, is going to run into another roadblock in terms of pushing his agenda?
Well, I can't predict whether this bill will pass. You might get some federal legislation. You might get more money for background checks. I mean, there's other things that can be done, but take a step back from it, though. I mean, this is a political party where the energy last year in his party was defund the police. And that's not what this president's talking about. So in a sense, he's already changed the conversation a bit. And I think that's probably a political winner for him.
Well, and I think the country has too, Carl. We look at the mayoral race, the primary in New York City. We see Eric Adams, right? Pro-police. I mean, this was not the defund the police folks, came up on the short end of that stick. There's also, Carl, a good story in the New York Times this morning about why so many police officers are leaving the force. And they focus specifically on the city of Asheville, North Carolina, which is sort of as it was described, a blue dot in the sort of deep red of Western North Carolina. But they talk about the force there and in forces around the country, including Chicago, the number of retirements, the number of folks who have taken buyouts and left the force, massive across. In New York, I think it was 1,000 last year. This year, or in 2019, it was 1,000. Last year it was 2,600 officers. So you got a lot of these police forces now that are operating under their I guess optimum levels. And they're having trouble recruiting. I mean, the story in the New York Times said it takes a year to train a police officer. Of the 7 that were hired in Asheville, 6 have already quit. So this is a real problem that's going on around the country, Carl. And I think the damage that might have been done from last year it's going to take a long time to fix.
I agree with you. And it's a crisis, and a national crisis, really. And, demonizing the police by the people, by the mayors, of these cities, it was demoralizing to them. And why wouldn't it be? You're putting your life at risk. The only cops who get any attention are the bad apples, like, this thug in Minneapolis. The Democratic politicians in these cities outdoing each other to try, cut your budget, cut your pension, your unions being attacked, and called racist routinely. And more than that, indicted by knee-jerk prosecutors, which is what happened in Atlanta without even waiting for the facts. I think this country does need to rethink policing. I don't think police should shoot 1,000 people fatally every year. We've talked about that before. I've been adamant about that. But defund the police, demonize the police, that was a dead end. And you're starting to see the bad fruits of that.
Yep. All right. We will leave it there for this morning. For the Real Clear Politics Takeaway, I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief. Join us tomorrow for our longer Friday podcast, which is audio only. Until then, this has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for June 24th, 2021.